So we're going to talk about lysosomes in this video. So I briefly mentioned about them in the last video. And if you're watching these in order, then lysosomes are these little structures that are basically coming off of the Golgi complex. So we're going to talk about the purpose of lysosomes, what they do. So lysosomes are kind of like the stomach of the cells. They are involved in digestion of molecules within the cell. And as your body brings in food, for example, lysosomes are going to digest that. As different cell structures get old and die, they need to be recycled. So lysosomes will go and digest those. So the lysosome's job is basically to be like the stomach. So kind of like the stomach is going to contain enzymes in there to help break down the food or whatever you're eating. It can what can happen is we're going to talk about some disorders. So what can happen if there's a problem or a genetic problem with one of the enzymes that can create something called lysosomal storage disease. So it contains many enzymes, and if there's a defect in one of the enzymes, then it can create lysosomal storage disease. So here's a picture of that again. So lysosomes are like the stomach. They're going to be involved in digesting things, breaking them down. However, sometimes it goes to break down something, but it doesn't have the right enzyme to do that. So then it cannot break it down. So what's going to happen if it cannot break it down? Well, the lysosomes is going to get stuck, basically full of the compound. It cannot break down. So it cannot eliminate it, kind of fills it up with that compound. And if it can't just process it, then it just can't, it's not gonna go away. So trying to think of an analogy. So if you want to think of an analogy, maybe think about plastic. We have so much plastic right now. If you look at a big picture of our world, maybe it's not the best analogy, but we don't really have a lot of technology to break down plastic very well. So it's kind of just like we throw it out, it kind of builds up, and our world is kind of filling up with plastic right now. Think about how much plastic is in the oceans. In this case, it stays contained within the lysosome. So in this picture on the right here, we're looking at a disease called alpha melanocytosis. So, which I don't care about if you know the name or not. But the point here is in this picture on the right is the normal looking cell, healthy looking cell, or typical healthy person. And then on the left right here is a cell that's showing you a lot of these empty spaces. And this is the person who has the disease. So these empty spaces, the little clear spaces here, are the lysosomes that are basically filling up with different compounds that can't be broken down in that person because they have a genetic disorder, which means their body cannot make the right enzyme. So this is an example of lysosomal storage disease right here. And so these clear spots, they are just lysosomes. They are full and they don't know what to do. So they're just kind of full, and now they can't get rid of the waste or whatever they're containing because there's not right enzyme available to break stuff down. So it turns out the whole chart is looking at different kinds of lysosomal storage disorders. You don't need to know this chart, but there are different things in here that are basically showing how many different enzymes are found in the lysosomes and all different jobs that it has to do. The one I want to bring our attention to is the one that's highlighted on the chart, this one here. So the one that's highlighted, that's Tay-Sachs disease. We started talking about that disease when we started this unit. So we're just going back to it. So Tay-Sachs, if you remember, it was a disease that affected children in young infancy. It was invariably fatal. And the reason is it exists is that this person cannot break down certain compounds. It's missing this particular enzyme. And because of it, it cannot break down certain kinds of compounds. So the lysosomes, they fill up apparently, and that becomes a fatal disorder. So Tay-Sachs disease is it's a lysosomal storage disease. It cannot break down certain compounds. And those are called gangliosides. These are parts of the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. And then you might be thinking, why is it that we need to break down plasma membrane? So that's just because it gets old and it needs to be recycled. So that's the job of the lysosomes. So as it's trying to break these things down, it will build up. That's why Tay-Sachs disease doesn't manifest immediately. It's it's not manifesting at birth or before birth. There's some time where it's kind of building up and building up these compounds. And eventually the accumulation starts to become toxic. So these gangliosides building up in the lysosomes become toxic to the cells in which they're building up. So especially like the nervous system, for example. So as a result of that, then, at around 6 months, the person is going to start showing symptoms. And it's just going to degenerate and degenerate. And by the time they're about 4 years old or earlier, it becomes fatal for their system. And we don't really have a good way to put this, put the design into the cells to eliminate the problem, but it seems that it, it might not take long to figure out with the technology that we have. Maybe you heard about CRISPR. So we will probably be able to treat Tay-Sachs disease within maybe next 10 or 20 years. Hopefully there'll be medication that they'll be able to try and treat it. And hopefully there will be a treatment for this. I think there will be a treatment in 10 or 20 years because of the technology that we have or we're working on. So I just wanted to mention that disease. We'll talk about the population part. Why is it in certain populations more than the others at another time? But I just wanted to go over this. So I already mentioned about the nervous system, especially in brain cells. And that's the place that I'm going to stop this video.